Okay, I think we'll go ahead and kick it off and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us in our teachers panel. I'm kind of hoping some more teachers join us as we get going here. But the whole idea behind this panel is really to help teachers find resources and look at other teachers who may be using GIS in the classrooms. GIS is becoming a fairly core piece of technology in the commercial world. And it's not going to be very long before most of your kids are going to start using it just like an Excel spreadsheet. It's just another tool in their skill set they have in their back pocket. So if they can use it for data analysis or whatever it is, I think kids are going to need this technology as a skill that they should carry with them. Having said that, we do know teachers have a lot on their plates, and it is pretty hard to get new technology introduced into the classroom. So today we are fortunate enough that we actually have 4 teachers who are implementing GIS in their classrooms very successfully. And so we're going to hear from them. We also have Joseph Kerski from ESRI, who is the person for teacher, educator, K through 12 resources at ESRI. So feel free to bombard him with questions on how to make this thing happen. Honestly, licenses and technology should not be your hurdle. Your hurdle should be really just kind of, how do I integrate this into my curriculum? And having said that, we'll quickly kind of go around the room. If each one of our panelists can take a minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll get going. Let's go ahead and start with Sara, please.
Hi, my name is Sara Fox, and I am at the Academy of Science and Technology located in a suburb that is just north of Houston, Texas. And I teach scientific research and design as well as AP biology, but I use ArcGIS in my scientific research and design class, and that is a class for freshmen in high school.
Okay, Carl.
Yes, good morning. My name is Carl Brown. I teach at Saxe High School of Garland ISD, which is about 20 miles, maybe 20 minutes outside of Dallas. Proud U of H alum and SMU alumni as well. I teach AP Human Geography and AP Psychology, mainly for Human Geography with freshmen. We incorporate a lot of GIS story maps consistently throughout various units. And I think we've grown and really been able to enhance the quality of learning at that level.
Great, thank you, Carl. Let's go to Matthew.
I'm Matthew Mann from San Antonio. I'm teaching Northeast ISD at MacArthur High School. And I also teach AP Human Geography and implement GIS as much as possible into that curriculum. My students actually right now are working on a story map with world religions. And so they really get into that stuff. And then Survey 123 is a great way to kind of like easily get into it and get students involved with interacting with data and materials. And I'll talk about that a little bit too.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. And we also have Erik Bushland. And just so you know, Matthew and Erik are actually pros at this because they joined us on the panel last year as well. So thank you for being repeat offenders. Go ahead, Erik.
Thank you very much for having me here this morning. My name is Erik Bushland, and I'm at Saxe High School as well as Carl, except for I'm downstairs away from him. I've been at Saxe for 17 years. Unlike the other 3 teachers, I teach animation, video game design, and when it makes, we have a GIS component. Of course, that's dual credit with Brookhaven that I will teach, like I said, when it makes. Once I learned what GIS had to offer, I've been trying to find ways to incorporate it into my class, whether it's story maps, ArcMap, ArcGIS Online, Survey 123. There's a lot of great resources out there to help pull it into areas outside of the core classes.
Okay, great. And we'll let Joseph introduce himself a little later before he starts speaking. And okay, so now we'll go ahead and just kind of, what I'd love to do is have each one of you go through and tell us a little about really some of the successes you've had. You know, what has really resonated with the students and how has it improved their learning in their class, in the subject matter you're trying to teach. So we'll mix it up a little here since my gallery kind of reshuffled itself, but we'll start with you, Erik.
All right. For me, using GIS and animation has actually been kind of a unique learning adventure. I have some students that we have a course that's combined with computer science, and we have been working on a first responder simulation. And we learned that working with the fire department, that their zone of response is larger than the city. So to recreate their area, we picked up data from the county's appraisal districts, had the students learn how to cull data to get just the plots that we needed, pulled that into City Engine, which is another ESRI product, and they've done a lot over the years to make the integration better, to create the city, the streets, the buildings. Students use Survey 123 to go around and gather the geolocation and confirm the location of street signs, fire hydrants, as the fire department found out their map was not as accurate as they thought, which was both good for them and a unique experience for the students to realize that. And then all that gets put into a game engine so that we can do the simulation. But the students also create a story map to tell about their experience, how they put everything together, how they had to work together, their trials that they had to overcome. And then they present that to the school board members that show up, city officials, fire department, local businesses, to kind of show how we can think outside of the box to get community service projects that are valuable to the students and to the community.
Wow, that sounds neat. I'd like to take your class. Let's go ahead with Matthew.
All right, so kind of piggybacking on that, I think that GIS definitely provides the opportunity to demonstrate to students how geography is impactful to their lives on a daily basis, and how it's applicable kind of in a multitude of different areas. So when I start the year off, the very first week, actually this first or second day of school, I actually assign a survey through Survey 123, where students give me some basic personal information and identify the nearest cross street to where they live. And then the next day, I'm able to populate the map, then show the students that information, and then also start showing students how to manipulate symbols and go from individual symbols to heat maps. And we can look at patterns of where students live in different neighborhoods in our attendance zone. So at the same time that I'm introducing some of the core concepts to AP Human Geography, I'm also showing how maps can not just be static, but can be interactive and changing to our needs.
Wow, and does it make it easier for them to understand and grasp the concepts of just your core curriculum by doing it?
Definitely, I think that that adage that we want to start local and then go global. If they understand patterns, if they understand other concepts in their neighborhood, then when we go to places that they're like, oh, I've never even heard of that place, they can then say, oh, but I have heard of clustering, and I have heard of geometric patterns versus other things. So it does add some like real life experience early on, And then it also shows them that, maps the usefulness of maps. And obviously students are jumping on to, Google Maps all the time, and they're trying to find out where they are and stuff like that, but they're not really making that connection that geography is like in their hand right there. And so this kind of like opens it up right away too, that they have the power to manipulate that data and that information.
Great. Thank you, Matthew. Sarah.
So I use ArcGIS with my research class, and in the class I teach students how scientists do research. And so in the fall we go through the process of science fair, and then in the spring we do an environmental profile of a local forest, and that is where ArcGIS initially came in. And so we would have one of our teams that would be out doing this project, and they would make maps in the forest of the data that the other teams had found. And so that was kind of where I started with GIS. And then it's kind of morphed from there into instead of having one team work on maps, all of the teams work on maps. And then for the past 2 years, we've not been able to do that environmental profile project due to COVID. And so my use of ArcGIS has really increased exponentially in order to, fill that time. And so I've been really grateful for all of the resources that have been available. I would love to say my ultimate success story, and I'm hoping it's going to happen, is that one day I'm going to have a student who, after they've taken my class, their 9th grade year, they end up using ArcGIS in a science fair project. I haven't had that happen yet. So that's my ultimate success story. I'll feel like I've arrived at that point. So for right now, I think that my success story is me. I used ArcGIS when I was in college over 20 years ago at this point, and it's changed quite a bit. And when I came into the role that I'm in now, that I've been in for the past 7 years, there was, kind of a set pathway, but it was basically like, hey, students are going to use this program, and here you go. And so all of the learning and all of the lessons and the flow of the lessons and what we're going to do and what we're going to focus on has been at my discretion. And just being able to try to figure that out and get a good flow of lessons for the students so that they can learn the most concepts in the time that we have is something that I do pride myself on. I'm pretty proud that I've been able to do that. And my students primarily use it to, they're mapping scientific data. But last year, we used so many of the different tools. So we made story maps, and we made heat maps, and we did where there were maps layered on top of other maps and things like that, and just really played with all of the various tools that are available in the program. And it's something that I find to be a lot of fun, and most of them do as well, even though it is fairly tough for them.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And just so you know, we actually have had 2 Academy kids in the past do GIS projects for a science fair, because I know I was pulled in to help them out. So hopefully this is going to be more. Carl.
Yeah, definitely. Just to really echo and reiterate what my colleagues have stated. For me personally, this is I think year 7 teaching AP Human Geography. I am a AP reader as well, and I've really just seen the manifestation of story maps and ArcGIS grow tremendously over the years. I'm very fortunate to have a relationship with Mr. Bushland. He has introduced a lot of different concepts and ideas to me. And also he's got a chance to introduce Dr. Joseph Kerski to me as well. And I want to say, was it 2018, Dr. Kerski, when you came to visit our students and kind of gave a mini seminar?
It was a blast. I was in that very classroom of yours, just soaking in the wisdom of Mr. Brown.
Highly impressed, just of course with his energy, his delivery of the concepts, and how powerful GIS is. A little bit more in terms of how we use it and how it's grown for me personally. In 2019, I got a chance to actually attend the Geotech Center at Brookhaven College that Mr. Bushland was speaking about, and design my first ever story map through layered maps of GIS. And I'm going to actually be sharing that with you along with other tools that we consistently use in AP Human Geography. My task has been to try to find story maps, any kind of GIS platform that is connected to the CED, the curriculum exam description. And we've been very fortunate to do that consistently for a variety of units in AP Human Geography. So what we do is our charge is we want the students to use the technology, which is far better than PowerPoint, far better than Prezi, just at a higher level of enhanced engagement. And we want them to either create their own questions from the story maps, or I will design questions. Some are open-ended, some are multiple choice, where they have to filter and process information and try to, make those connections with terminology or just spatial awareness as a whole. I know Matthew, Mr. Mann spoke about how we're looking for patterns. That is the absolute truth when it comes to human geography. We teach our kids to think spatially. We want them to look at patterns or even a lack of patterns from population issues, migration issues, urban geography, agricultural geography, industrialization, economics, the whole gambit. And that is our overall purpose. We are looking to scale things from obviously a local scale to a more regional scale to a national scale, and eventually to the global scale. So ArcGIS and Story Maps has given us that capability. And I think it's really just opened their eyes to a different level of thinking with the technology. It almost inserts the students into the moment of a situation or a global event. Different concepts, I truly believe have really elevated my students, their overall academic growth, especially in human geography. And because it is such a modern class, we're not just stuck, in a particular time frame within history. It is constantly evolving and constantly growing. So I actually have created like a Google Doc. I just posted it in the chat bar there. So if any teacher or even anyone here on this panel wants to take a look at that, these are just some of my favorite story maps that I've found over the years and been able to massage them into the course. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks for sharing that Google link. Let's move on to the next set of questions. Really, I'm going to mix it up a little here. The first question is, what are some of the challenges you may have run into using this technology in your curriculum? And we'll start with Erik, since he's using it very different. He's actually integrating GIS with other technologies, which is exciting.
Well, that's one of the things that I love about the GIS area is it's the way it can be incorporated into all manner of fields. But for me, with my program, we combined my third year animation with third year computer science. And one of the biggest challenges that we've had is we have to prove to the district year after year after year how valuable this is, because they don't see the intrinsic value that comes from having two teachers teach 25 kids versus two teachers teaching 50 kids. They think it's, financially it's a waste of money. So we have to prove to them year after year how valuable this is. So I was waiting for the
Yeah, we've got it.
But with ESRI support, and as we talked about Dr. Kerski coming out, they provide a lot of support. It's the value of the education that the students are getting outweigh, in my opinion, the cost of the two teachers being in the classroom. But outside of that, because we're recreating the city of Saxe, all the buildings, all the roads, all the utilities, it's not anything we can do in 1 year. So trying to get the students to learn how to pass that information on, using story maps to tell about their successes, their trials, as well as the whole program itself, documenting the shortcuts that they've figured out, the resources that they have. But on a more practical point, when we were working with Survey 123, we actually had the students go out and record the same information at different times and then compare, did they come up with the same information? Once we sent them around the school, tracking down the fire extinguishers, put together a map and realized that some students found this fire extinguisher and other students didn't. Is there really a fire extinguisher there?
Yeah.
It's taking that data and figuring out how accurate it is and looking for that, the value of that as well. So, you know, again, it's a challenge. Again, the support that we get from ESRI and even the administration, once they see what we're doing, has been phenomenal.
Great. Thank you, guys. And I'll just remind you, we will pass the baton to Joe Kerski in just 10 minutes. So we are going to have to keep our answers a little short. In terms of challenges, Sarah, do you face technical challenges, or what's tough on your curriculum?
There we go. My unmute wasn't working. I am really lucky that my administration fully supports me, so that's great. We do sometimes have some challenges with technology, just in terms of the software being incredibly powerful and our computers not always being as powerful as what the software kind of requires. So that can be an issue. But I would say that my three biggest challenges, and I'll keep it short. First is that I have struggled sometimes kind of following the pathways that have led me to really good lessons that I've found on the ESRI site. Then later when I'm trying to find them again, like it's almost like I'm, having to navigate a map to get back to it. And I've struggled there. So maybe a little bit better ease of access. And then in addition, there's a lot of really amazing lessons that are available, including some full units, but I don't necessarily have the time to do the whole unit, and I want to get in as much information as possible. And so figuring out which pieces to take from each part is definitely a challenge for me. And my third challenge is that when we do our environmental profile project, it's fairly easy to say, go make a map of the data that you have collected. But I would love it if I was able to integrate a project like the fire extinguisher project or something like that, where my students go and collect some other data and then make a map from it. And I haven't yet figured that out. So those are the challenges that I face. They're pretty much all on my end, not a technology end.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Joe took some notes, I believe. Okay, the next question really is, if because we've got Joe Kerski on the line here participating, this is your opportunity to really shout out and say, hey, what other resources can be made available to you? So there's two arms to it, right? One is the straight technology side, and the second one is, can I get external help? And there is a geo-mentoring program that I'm involved in, so we're both listening and taking notes. So tell us, Matthew, really what additional resources could you use in the classroom?
All right. First off, listening to the different applications so far today has already given me great ideas to step out there and go talk to our law enforcement teachers and stuff about how they could apply GIS, which then leads me to one of the things that I think needs to continue to be strong, and it has been. ESRI in the past has had a great kind of network of teachers around, and still does have this network of teachers around the country through Teachers Teaching Teachers. But that's kind of been transformed over the last couple of years, and maybe trying to find the best strategies for getting out there and getting the word to districts. And so making that network available and just getting the word out that there are teachers within the different school districts, within the different major metropolitan areas, hopefully maybe in some of the rural areas also, that can be, mentors, and keep that growing is really, I think, hugely important. And then, Sarah, I agree about the resources that ESRI has through ArcGIS Geo Inquiries, and then also looking at some of the Learn ArcGIS lessons. I found one this year, but I just kind of stumbled on it, building Snow's map of the cholera pandemic. And you can have your students do that, but teachers can also teach themselves a lot about how to use the application by creating the map and then presenting that to the students. So there's so many ways to kind of like enter the use of GIS. But, how do we get that word out there? I think that's always what's so important.
Thank you, Matthew. Carl, how can we help you in your class?
Yeah, I think overall, we've seen a lot of growth, and we've matured into using this platform, the ArcGIS ESRI platform. Initially, it is a learning curve for students. So sometimes just the overall interface, the platform itself can take some time to navigate through and understand what you're looking at. But for me personally, I think hopefully in the future, as we continue to grow, we'll see more of a cohort and alignment with College Board, with National Geographic. I know Nat Geo already, we're using the new textbook, has some story maps embedded within their overall platform. But I would just like to see a more established cohort, whether it be an AP GIS course promoted from the top down, where there's almost like a class to career pathway for students to continue to grow and mature in this profession. I was just actually driving down the street just a couple of weeks ago, and I saw some guys using GIS technology and said, "Hey, can I get your business card? Would you mind being a guest speaker, for one of our review sessions," things of that nature. So I would hope to see a more corporate and a educational cohort really continue to show a place and show a real career for students, and to see, so they can really see how valuable this information, this technology is, and how it's only going to get better. It's only going to get better and better every single year. And these are lucrative careers that can really change your life. So to me, that's what I hope to promote, just from an introductory level with AP Human Geography, and hope that they take Mr. Bushland's class or any other GIS course, whether it be through a community college or even at the next level at a university. So it's that communication that we're expecting to see elevate as we move forward.
Great. Thank you, Carl. And I'm trying to mute. Someone who just joined is not muted, so I would appreciate it if you could mute your phone, please. Okay. What we're going to do is, I know most of us are expecting a Q&A at this point, but let's go ahead and jump into Dr. Kerski's presentation, and we'll take all the questions at the end. So Joe Kerski, take it away. Thank you.
Well, greetings all, Joseph Kerski here, and I am just amazed, inspired anew by all of you wonderful educators out there. Some of my favorite days of the last several decades actually is spending time in your classroom. So as Mr. Brown mentioned, I was at his school, Mr. Bushland's school. I'd love to visit you, Sarah, at some point, and Matthew, and others that are on here. And hopefully next year, well, we can make that happen. In the meantime, it's good that we've got these virtual ways of communicating and networking. And indeed, when I was thinking about the last few years conducting GIS professional development opportunities for teachers, the things that I did in those PD sessions are pretty much the same exact thing that I do on the web, right? Because the data's online, the tools are online, the web mapping applications that you share, the story maps, the dashboards and all of that, it's all online anyway. I still miss the, wandering around the classroom, looking over people's shoulders to talk about their challenges and what they found intriguing and so on. But, the actual methods and the data used and the lessons, as some of you are referring to, are pretty much the same. So it is good that if we had to do this hybrid / virtual instruction, that we at least have the GIS and the cloud at our fingertips. Now, some of you were around in the clunky days of GIS. Some of you are much too young to remember these days. But in the past, when we would do these professional development opportunities for educators, and then at the end of it, it was the realization, okay, I've got to have a really good lab in my school. I have to talk to my IT staff, and maybe they're not very responsive. I have to install software. I have to have a really high-end workstation for all the students. They can't do this online. They can't do this at home. They can't collect data in the field easily unless I had really high-end equipment. All these sort of tech barriers. So as our colleague Beni mentioned, the challenge nowadays is not the access to the technology, it's the integration. How are you going to integrate it into your biology, data science, animation, geography, mathematics, history, etc. courses? That's the main challenge. In my way of thinking, and I used to work at the U.S. Geological Survey, so forgive the physical geography example, but the cobbles and boulders in a conglomerate are sort of like the disciplines or subject matters in a school, right? You've got history and social studies and science, STEM, math, etc. And the geospatial thinking and technology are sort of like the sand that connects the conglomerate boulders and cobbles, if you know what I mean. And that's hard to grab, right? You grab that sand or that soil layer and it sort of sifts through the fingers. And so integrating it into the curriculum is the main challenge now. But as we've heard today, and hopefully those of you watching this recording in the future will be inspired that, look, here's some everyday wonderful teachers that are in there in the classroom and they're successfully integrating it. Why? Because it's intriguing. You educators are very thoughtful about the kinds of technology that you're going to integrate, right? You get these daily ads and emails from people, hey, integrate this technology and that technology. You can't do it all. You shouldn't do it all. You have to carefully weigh the costs and benefits, right? There is a cost to investing in any inquiry-based platform. And the double challenge of GIS, of course, as we know, is you are integrating a professional tool in the classroom. It's not educational software. So you have a double challenge of you've got to learn, you got to at least be semi-comfortable with some of the aspects of GIS, and you have to be able to teach with it, as opposed to someone who has a, an equally important job, understandably, in a city or county or private company or a nonprofit where they're using GIS on the job. They don't have to teach with it, right? So you have a double challenge. So I really salute you all, and I just want to encourage you. Encourage literally means breathing courage into. So I just encourage you to press on. You are instilling change agents in society, even while they're still students, change agents. So I'm going to share a few things, but I really would rather keep hearing from you wonderful educators. But for the remaining minutes that I have, Beni did talk to me about sharing some additional resources with the community, but I don't want to close off the discussion with these wonderful educators because that just warms the geo heartstrings, if you know what I mean. So let me just share a few things. I'm going to share this right now. This is an example of what was just mentioned by a few of you, and that is, here's the result of, I think it was Matthew talked about this. This is the end product of, I think many of us have variations on this lesson of the cholera 1854, which is unfortunately a present situation today, right? It's not only health and GIS are intertwined. For example, here at ESRI, we have a health team. And I think a small number of people wondered before 2020, why does a software company have a health team? Why do we have a chief medical officer? Some of you may have seen her on mainstream media, Dr. Esty Garrity. So she came from a medical center in Oakland, and she got all fired up about GIS, and she became our chief medical officer. Why does a software company have a medical team, a health team? I don't think they wonder about that anymore, right? Health is obviously one of the key issues of our time, and it's all spatial, just like supply chain, just like energy, water, inequities, biome and ecoregion degradation, habitat, and any other key issue of our 21st century world, right? So this is my variation on that lesson. I have the students map all the 1854 cholera from the John Snow data. They then at the end, my own little twist on that lesson, then they create buffer zones around the water wells and compute the number of cases within 500 feet in this case of each one of the water pumps. But my end product, which is the routes to the pumps, is the route that John Snow could take. This is my sort of, I know many of you do this in the classroom as well. Okay, now you're John Snow and you've got to visit every single pump in 24 hours because people are dying and it's a dire health situation. How are you going to be able to do that in 24 hours? So they calculate the most efficient route using ArcGIS Online analytical tools, and they come up with an answer, yay or nay, could he actually visit all 24? And then there's a nice nod to history. How was that calculated? It was calculated with 2021 walkability data, walking data. It's not 1854. We don't have a layer that indicates how fast it would take. So I had the students look at some photos or some drawings of, mid-19th century cities. Do you think it's easier to walk around downtown London or a major city now versus 160 years ago? So we have a nice discussion about that. But anyway, just to your points that there's literally nothing that you cannot do in terms of presenting these kinds of scenarios to students. There's no shortage of data. Sure, it doesn't have every single thing that you and I would like, but the advent of these open data portals and the living atlas of the world have been amazing for us as educators, right, folks? So one of the things that I wanted to share was, for those of you that don't know the ESRI Education program, it has been around since 1992. I was at U.S. Geological Survey back in the late Cretaceous there. But the program has gone on for decades now, and we are here to support educators at all levels: primary, secondary, university, technical college, tribal college, community college, libraries, museums. So anywhere there's education happening, we want to be there as real people. Is there a way to like tighten up my face like, Barry Manilow? Make me look like I'm 25 again. Anyway, the point is, we are real people. We're not just like you go to esri.com and there's a bot saying, hey, may I help you? No. We're actually real people. We have 15 of us, and we are here to completely support and foster whatever we can do to support the good work that you all are doing. Right? You are the heroes. We are just sort of the backup band. But we gain a lot from interacting with you, finding out what the challenges and the benefits are. And to that point, one of the things that I wrote recently, not that it's the end all be all, but this might be of use to you all as you advocate for geospatial technology and why you're doing what you're doing, because I know sometimes there are challenges. Administrators are saying, hey, you're a social studies educator. Why are you working with the science, or vice versa? Your GIS is a disruptive technology, right? It integrates, it's holistic thinking, it's spatial thinking, it's thinking about systems of systems. So these are 3 essays, again, not the end all be all, but what I believe are the 10 skills that if you and your students get comfortable with these 10 skills, these are just GIS skills in this case: overlay and spatial analysis, navigating on the map, making web mapping applications, being able to map your own data, integrating surveys, like some of you mentioned earlier. If you master these, or at least get comfortable with these 10 skills, the sky's the limit. You can do anything with geospatial, just with 10 core skills. You keep practicing those. And then I also have a top 10 educational benefits. Again, the spatial thinking, the critical thinking, the problem-based learning, et cetera. And then finally, what are 10 strategies? How do you integrate this? What are ways to do it? Now, in the past, when we had, lots of big, thick manuals of how to do GIS, there was kind of one pathway with some variation. But now I get inquiries from people all the time. Hey, what do I do in my intro to biology course, or my intro to GI science course, or what do I do first? What should I do next? What should I do in week 5? There's a lot of different ways to integrate this, which is actually good, but also with a lot of choices comes some uncertainty. So again, that's where I hope some of these essays can be of use. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I believe that obviously education is going to continue. It's as you well know, more than anybody, it is undergoing massive amounts of change, and it had been morphing and changing and reinventing itself right before the advent of COVID. But now many educators were obviously forced to teach online that had never taught online before, or hybrid, or how do I use this kind of technology in those settings? How do I do that? Why should I do that? And so also, I just wanted to submit to you all that geotechnologies is going to continue. We're not going to get to a point where we've got all the problems solved, or we're not asking the whys of where question, right, folks? We're always going to be asking the patterns, the relationships, the trends. And so we always are going to have this science of where. We're always going to have that with us. The Earth is a dynamic planet, as you well know. And there's 7.5 billion people shaping the planet. There's natural forces, and the combination of those two making an exciting planet and a very treasured and wonderful place that we want to instill students to want to love and protect. But we're never going to get to the point where this is not relevant. So I think that's in part what educators are saying, is that no matter what discipline I'm teaching, whether it's primary, secondary, university, in those institutions, I want to have the students dig into the where. So our goal on our team is twofold, really, and I'll put my contact information up here as well, along with some of my pathways in the past, is twofold. Deeper implementation of GIS. So as many of you touched on, doing some field work with students, even if it's on their own campus or in whatever neighborhoods they happen to be in remotely. So with Survey 123 or Quick Capture, for example, building web mapping applications, doing a little bit of analysis, maybe getting into some of the coding, like I saw Mr. Bushland students doing, and Python, Jupyter notebooks, and so on, symbolizing, classifying. So the deeper implementation of GIS, in other words, GIS is not equal to teaching ArcGIS Pro 2.7 or ArcGIS Online December 2021 version. No, it's a whole platform. And then, so that's the deeper implementation. The wider is, I think, exciting to all of us as educators, that GIS is starting to make some progress in non-geo, enviro, bio courses. So in history, data science, computer science, civil engineering, and elsewhere. That's pretty exciting. Why? Because people are valuing that whys of where in those disciplines. So let's say in a business course, well, it's all about location, right? So, hey, I want to find the best place for present to students, the best place for a new, convenience store or a skateboard park or a florist or et cetera. Where would be the best place to locate that? So, Business Analyst Web is a web-based GIS tool. It's got lots of data bundled up in it. They can do that kind of drive time, walk time, figure out where the competition is, make choropleth maps of consumer preference and demographic data. So that's the wider implementation of GIS. Now, another thing that I wanted to mention here ever so briefly, if this is at all intriguing to you or to folks that are listening to the recording, I know this sounds super geeky and boring, but tomorrow I'm doing a live webcast. It's after school, and it's going to be at 4 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Mountain. I'm in Colorado. This is Western Colorado behind me. And it's going to be just a bite-sized gluten-free piece of geospatial, if you know what I mean. It's going to be very fun, and we're going to explore some of these web mapping applications. And really, if you've got some colleagues that you kind of wanted to nudge into this, for you all on this call right now, in this session, it's going to be fairly basics, probably stuff that you already know. But maybe for colleagues that you're trying to sort of, again, convince that this is worth looking into, not just because of the job opportunities, not just because this is an intriguing, and maps have always been intriguing, sorts of lots of information in a small amount of space, but again, the higher noble goal, instill those students to make a difference in their world, right? Be change agents in their communities and in their world. That's really the goal of GIS, is to build a healthier, more equitable, more resilient community, planet, etc. So that's the higher goal. Anyway, that's happening tomorrow. I'd love to have some of you on there. in the remaining moments that I have, I want to just briefly cover some approaches, some data sets that I and educators have found to be useful and relevant. Mr. Brown mentioned what I kind of like to fold into geo news. Every week, for example, you could have the students grapple with a current event and, okay, let's bring in some data, let's analyze it in a geospatial context, and then present maybe a 5-minute presentation, create a story map or a dashboard or something, and you create that web mapping application and you present that information to your peers and to you know, your instructor. That is I know instructors that do that, and we actually modeled that in what someone else mentioned, the T3G Institute, Teachers Teaching Teachers GIS Institute. So I've got a couple of videos on my Our Earth channel that talks about that. But that's just one example. The other thing that I wanted to mention here, and that is some of these web mapping applications are great ways of not only introducing students to something that I think is really important, but why it all matters. And there's something that I think is really important is that the notion that maps are not just reference documents, right? Where is Saxe, Texas? Where is Houston, Texas? Where is Texas? Where is Colorado? Where is the USA? Where is Tajikistan, et cetera? It's not just where things are, right? But why things are where they are, why the patterns and relationships and trends exist. So something like this, which is part of a wonderful set of about 10 or 12 Living Atlas of the World apps. Some of you may have used this before, but I've got this swipe map with, I've got the 2014 imagery on the left side, the 2019, 2021, et cetera, imagery on the right side. And I can look at, in this case, as you can see, urban sprawl in Las Vegas. Thank you very much, Priscilla. That was my Elvis imitation. Anyway, the point is, why do we care about urbanization? What's where, why is it there, and why should we care, right? That threefold mantra. You can look at urban sprawl, and if I panned over, if I had time, I'd pan over to Lake Mead. In the span of 7 years, as you folks well know, you've got a rapidly decreasing lake level for not only Lake Mead, but other surface water that helps cities fulfill their municipal, industrial, commercial, residential drinking water. Okay, if there's not enough groundwater, we've got to get the water from somewhere. And so again, what's where, why is it there, and why should we care? In the span of a short amount of time, being able to do this for this area, I think really drives the point home. The point is, as you know, when we're using geospatial technology, we're not just having a discussion or a lecture about climate, vegetation, biomes, energy, water, et cetera. The students are actually investigating those. Not to say that the discussion and the lecture doesn't have its place, because it still does. And your role is super critical here, because you're the one helping the students articulate the spatial. They don't understand a lot of the times, as you well know, how to articulate clustering versus dispersed versus random pattern. You're helping them to frame those actual vocabulary words. But the point is, at multiple scales, you've got gigabyte loads just in this one application alone of imagery at your fingertips. And I think it's just fascinating to be able to look at, and it's also oftentimes grim, which is, again, why we need students with these skills and abilities to make a positive difference in our world. But not only urbanization with this same tool, coastal erosion, expansion of agriculture into the Great Plains of the USA or Saudi Arabia, glacial retreat, construction of the Three Gorges Dam or mega projects around the world, the islands off of Abu Dhabi, et cetera. You've got a lot, Kilauea. I mean, you've got a lot of imagery at your fingertips here, which is part of this way back, part of the Living Atlas. It is one of the apps there. So invite you to look at that one. The other one that I frequently use in teacher, educational, professional development, and also with students is, you know, the whole tying in of the Internet of Things that are increasingly connected to latitude and longitude locations, and being able to teach with this. So if I click in the Water Balance app and I say, okay, it's not a winter and summer in the Amazon, right? I clicked in the Amazon. It's a wet season and a dry season and ask the students, okay, what's the wet season and what's the dry season? Well, based on the data, we also always have to say, according to this data set, more about that in a minute, it looks like right around now is beginning the dry season, right? Or at least in midpoint of the dry season. Then around January, February, we're going to be into the wet season. Interesting. Okay, fascinating. So if I clicked in southern Libya and I've got whole months of the year with absolutely no precipitation, according to this data set, okay, then maybe we should look at the agriculture there, the population density. What kind of ag and population is supported by almost no precipitation? And the answer, of course, is not much of either one. Okay, why is that? And then maybe a little bit closer to home, what about some of these big spikes that we've seen in Southeast Texas? Well, as you folks well know, you've got a couple of major tropical storms and hurricanes roaring their way through there. And so we can look at trends over time. So this map and this data set, as you can see, it's not, in this case, real time. It's near real time. So it's a couple months old, but it won't be the same next month when you look at it. We'll have the August data in there. And so it's another application of, hey, people want to map data in real time. Water, wildfires, right? Population, traffic, stream gauges down the street from your school, et cetera. And so web-based GIS is allowing us to ingest that information and then being able to teach, okay, why do we care about precipitation or any of these other variables up here? What's the relationship between evapotranspiration to precipitation, to soil moisture, et cetera? Why do we care about such things? So the other one that I wanted to connect you with is this whole idea of, some of you touched on this, connecting surveys to analysis to mapping. So here I've got an example of walkability. You know, as a geographer, I care about walkable neighborhoods. And so when I was in the days of, work travel, I always made it a point, even if it was not very easy to walk around. And so I created this story map, starting with a photograph of, hey, do you think this is walkable or not? What is walkability? Why do neighborhoods care about it? Why do communities care about it? And inside the walkability story map, and I'll share this in the chat box, I have a survey 1, 2, 3. It's crowdsourced. So I've got 5 simple questions in there. Is it walkable or not? Rate it, horrible to excellent. Tick all the choices that describe it. Branches, wide path or sidewalk. Where is it? Germane to our discussion today. And do you have a photograph of it? So the results then are in this interactive web map, right? This just like the other data that we've looked at. In this case, my feed for this map is obviously coming from my survey 1, 2, 3. And then the last thing that I wanted to share in that particular story map, as you probably know what's coming, is a dashboard. So this dashboard, right, is the same. I think the powerful message is, well, it's 2 messages. The same technology that students have seen, that everybody on the planet has seen with the JHU COVID dashboard, right? It's the same tool that you have at your fingertips. So in this case, my dashboard is getting fed from my one single survey. And so right now, as you can see, I've got roughly 600 points from my walkability survey. It's an open survey until I, the author of that survey, turn it off. You and your students can actually collect data into it. And I've got the pie charts showing some of the characteristics. Roughly 3/4 are deemed pedestrian friendly as of this moment here on 16 November. And I think the other powerful message here is that the story map, the dashboard, the map, and the survey took me 4 class periods to create. 4 hours. So we're not talking, days, weeks, months of creating these things, right? It's doable. And the last thing that I'll close with on this part is it's connecting pieces of the platform. Now, you and I use lots of tools that are not connected to anything else, right? On our computers, on our devices. I've got EarthenView. I've used it for 20 years. It does my one-touch photo editing. It's like 4 megabytes in size. It's not connected to anything else, but it's useful for what I want to do. It's the same thing with some of the apps on your phone, right? They're not connected to anything else, oftentimes. But here, the power is that you've got these pieces of the ArcGIS platform that are connected. And I think using those in a connected mode brings you additional capabilities, inquiry, power into your classrooms, okay? But now, by extension, take this walkability example and say, well, Joseph, I don't care about Joseph, I don't want to study walkability with my students. I want to study invasive species, like Miss Fox there in her biology class. Invasive species, types of plants, right, etc. Litter, public art, water quality, weather, dangerous intersections in your community, graffiti, urban greenways, historic homes, right? I mean, the sky's the limit. You are all the creative educators. You could come up with lots more ideas than I've just thrown out there. But the point is, you could use this same idea to map other things, and not just map other things, but then understand them. Oftentimes, on that note, people will send me their URLs for their web maps and say, hey, Joseph, I've got my data on the map. And I'll say, that's great. And in a gentle way, right? The point is, it's not, the end goal is not just to map things, right? The end goal is to understand things in a richer, deeper way, right? So the students are making connections and they're synthesizing, right? All that stuff that you and I love about education. So it's good. Mapping and GIS are good tools, but there's a higher, greater goal, right, folks? The higher, greater goal is to help students to think systems of systems and think about cycles, the carbon cycle, the hydrologic cycle, systems of systems, the lithosphere, the hydrosphere, the anthrosphere, the biosphere, right? The atmosphere. So thinking about all those things in a connected mode. And then what we do in one sphere affects other spheres. So that to me is one of the higher goals of this. Okay, that all being said, let me close with just a couple more resources. I know this is sort of like, but hopefully it's of value. If you already know about these things, you good people that are on here now, maybe it's something you share with colleagues of yours. But if you need additional inspiration, I've got a column called Geo Inspirations, where I interview people from all over the world making a difference with geospatial technology. Some of these are text, some of them are podcasts, and I've got a whole wide variety of people in here from multiple countries around the world, etc. I also have geo-inspirational women in here. So a subset of the Geo Inspirations column, but okay, what are these females doing around the world with geospatial technology? And so it's hopefully of something that you can share with students that say, hey, you know what? That person's a planner. That person loves to get outside. Like that person loves coding. That person, etc. So I hope that's valuable. And then finally, the very last thing, I promise, but I wanted to show one more thing, and that is this ESRI Maps for Public Policy. I wrote a essay a while back, a couple months ago, about teaching about racial, ethnic, economic, and other disparities and inequities with geospatial technology. And one of the resources there, but for a wider variety of issues as well, are these ESRI maps for public policy. They're part of ArcGIS Online, but they're maps that you can actually, bells ringing in 5 minutes, or my Zoom students are arriving in 5 minutes. I need to have a map, let's say of Houston, of, okay, people living in group quarters. And then what if I also said, okay, well, what does that mean for a natural hazard, like a hurricane? Okay, what are group quarters for one thing, and why? What special concern are these people living in group quarters to an emergency situation? And in these maps for public policy, okay, I've got a variety of maps just for Houston, and then I can save, or anywhere else for that matter. And then notice I can save this to favorites. They're part of ArcGIS Online. Many of them are part of the Living Atlas. So I can actually compile these favorites into a set that I can teach with right away. Okay, so they're great, I think, for sparking classroom discussions on a whole wide variety of issues. And they're all part of this policy map zone you can see in the upper left here on a variety of different topics. So for those of you that, again, you're trying to maybe convince and interest colleagues, this is, I think, a nice starting point. Plus, many of these maps are already compiled. You know that you can compile these on your own, right? You can go to arcgis.com and you can start your own map and you can add data and then you can symbolize it. And each one of these would take you probably a half an hour to create. Should you spend your valuable educational time creating all your own maps? You already create many of your own maps, and so do the students. But here, what I'm saying is that these are already created. Now, I want students to be critical of data, and I do have a data blog that sounds super boring, doesn't it? Joseph's data blog. I can't stand my excitement. But the idea here is getting students to understand where data is. Can I trust it? Ooh, it's a web map. Do I believe every map that I see? Hopefully not. Do I believe every web map that I see? And then what about societal issues? Copyright, location privacy. Do I share all my fitness walks, runs, cycle rides? And if I did, would it matter? All those kinds of, and lots of ethical discussions. So I'm going to put that in the chat box as well. Questions, comments, issues? Is there anything that resonated with you all? Again, I really wanted to have this whole session be more of you sharing, but I didn't want to shirk my own responsibilities either. So, well, thanks for the opportunity, folks. I hope the silence doesn't mean that you're checking emails and doing other things. Hopefully that was of interest.
That was amazing. Thank you. I mean, I'm just mind blown. If I could, I'd hug you and I'd keep you all to myself and ask you 1,000 questions, but I don't know. I'm not going to do that.
Well, thanks for the kind words. You folks are the real heroes, and I have great respect for all the things that you're doing. Seriously, don't get discouraged. I know it's not easy to integrate something like a GIS. It's frankly easier to hand out a bunch of static worksheets. Not that those don't have their place oftentimes, right, in the curriculum, but it's just a lot easier to do other kinds of instruction. It just is. And so again, I salute you for taking the hard road.
Well, hey,
It'll be worth it.
thanks a million, Joseph. And if you can, please drop your share so I can see everyone. And guys, we're wide open to questions now. So go ahead and just put your hand up and I'll call out on you. And that way you can talk, or you can type it into chat and I can read it back to everyone and get it going. So Myra, I know you may have a question. Let's go ahead and start with you.
All right. You know, I consider myself like a GIS evangelist. I believe that the future requires, just think about our future if our kids had geospatial capabilities. So one question I ask everybody, and I'm really interested in, is how could we, and maybe this is a perfect panel since you guys do GIS and teach, how can we get GIS in our K through 12 schools? How can we, I don't know, like, do you have to talk to the people in certain districts? I don't know, what is the path? Because I believe GIS is the path. GIS is the way. That might be a broad question, but then maybe it's the perfect place to ask a question with you amazing panel here. Thank you, and I'm done.
I'll tell you what, let's kind of target this. I think the answer is in multiple ways, right? The first one is get teachers involved and get teachers to bring it in the classroom. And the second one, maybe there's an advocacy need at the school district level or the state education board level. So let's go ahead and have one, some of the teachers tell us, how did you get it into your classrooms?
So I did go through so my kind of experience with GIS started with Dr. In-Jung Jo at Texas State University, and they've actually got a great PhD program there. I don't know how it's going right now, but I know that they're building that for geographic education. So it's actually directed towards educators in the field of geography and how to make that really start to stand out. And then from there, I went and did go through the T3G training. And I think that kind of to Myra's point or question, that networking is hugely important. And so kind of keeping the discussion going beyond today would be great, for anyone here. And then you have to talk to your administrators if you're a teacher. You have to talk to your district coordinators. So I've been able to do some trainings through Northeast ISD and have gotten some good feedback from that. And sadly, COVID kind of got in the way. And so now I'm trying to rebuild a lot. And I think that's something that Dr. Kerski brought up is, while COVID was an interrupter itself, using this technology can be a way to kind of bridge some of those gaps. And so getting the word out about that too. But I think building the networks and then getting out there and showing results to leaders and decision makers in schools is really important.
On the panel, does anyone else want to add to that? I mean, that's great, Matthew. Yeah, Carl?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to again reiterate some of those connections. In Growing ISD, my department chair and as well as just the social studies curriculum as a whole has been in contact with Anita Palmer. Anita Palmer is one of the gurus in GIS here in Texas. Mr. Bushland has also connected me with the Palmers and been able to just enhance that connection, to really make that connection. And I would say it definitely has to start at the district level. We're really top down from the state level to the district level, with being able to find panels such as this, National Council of Social Studies, the American Association of Geographers, the AAG, the AGS, the American Geographical Society. You will see different connections made there, and how multiple teachers, multiple administrators really push for data mining and data tracking. So, and I think that's the pathway that we can really advocate for, is how to be able to track data. And this platform, ESRI ArcGIS, is to me the way to go.
Joe, do you have anything to add? I guess not.
I would just say this. This is Joseph. Hey. We have been working from two angles, Mayra. Anyway, the top down. So we work with the state social studies coordinators, state science supervisors, Western Governors Association, folks like that. We don't oftentimes have a seat at the table, so to speak, because oftentimes those folks think, our team, we're from a software company. They think they don't know us, and they think, oh, we're just trying to push tools or to push software. So we've actually had more, and we're not giving up on that, angle, but we've mostly focused on the actual educators, working with them individually through science teacher conferences, geography education conferences, CTE events. But I think you folks are in the right place to do GIS education implementation. You've got a great geospatial community in Texas with a lot of folks in industry and government agencies. And also there's a very, as you know, good support. I mean, Matthew mentioned Texas State, and they actually have a geo ed focus, which not very many universities have. So there's a good higher education support network as well. And there's, if you folks are perfect examples, there's an excellent K-12 educator network in Texas. So I guess I would say there's not one way that this works. There's not one pathway, but I think one of the keys is, as you all again are examples of, there is a champion. However they got to be a champion in their school. They are sort of, once you become excited about this, right? It's hard to, you're all geo evangelists, right? You can't stop yourself. You're on a stairwell, you're in a airplane seat next to someone. You're like, geotechnologies, let me tell you about it, right? And so, that is to me the way that it, in part, that it has moved forward all these years is through individuals like you, nudging the needle forward and attracting colleagues in other disciplines to it. So I don't know, that was kind of a long-winded answer, but there's multiple pathways where this actually has, and I've got a couple of articles that I've co-written with a couple of other folks, one on the T3G Institute that Matthew mentioned. I've got it. It's one of those that's, it's in a peer-reviewed journal. So you have to email me to get a copy of it. You're going to be in the publisher's firewall, and you've got to subscribe and stuff. Just email me and I can send you that article. But it has shown, based on this study, we surveyed about 400 educators, what the challenges and benefits are, if it's of interest to you.
I also noticed in the chat, was it Bonnie McLean saying that she is a GIS professional and she has volunteered in schools. And so making those connections also to people using it in the real world and bringing that into the classroom is awesome.
And I also posted Joseph's email in the chat. So if anyone wants to bug him later, that'd be great. Do we have any other questions in the audience? Panelists, I'd love, if you have any questions for Joseph, please, or each other, because really this is a place for you to pick anyone's brains possible. I will put out there, I personally have been teaching and helping Sara Fox's class, not only with Sara, but also prior to her, whoever taught that class for many years. And there is a Geo Mentor program out there where a bunch of us professionals in the industry are more than willing to walk into your classroom and help you navigate this technology, because this is what we do for a living and this is what we do every day, day in, day out. And so we can often jump in and help you. I will, I'll put the link to that on chat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great free resource. People will come into your classrooms and help you with it.
And, I would say, Beni, in response, a lot of times I'll encourage educators to tap into that network for data prep. I have a tension about having educators spend a lot of time preparing layers and maps and stuff for them to use in the classroom. This is what, GIS, full-time GIS people do all the time. So I would say that would be a great way of I want to have this web map with these layers in it. Please create that for me, that type of thing. And they could do it. I'd rather have you instructors actually spending more of your time, figuring out, okay, how am I going to use this map or this app and teach with it? Anyways, that's just one of the thoughts, that one of the things that they could actually do to save you time.
I'll add.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Matthew.
I was just going to say, a little bit of kind of digging around can really get you some great results. Here in San Antonio, we have the Edwards Aquifer Authority that monitors the aquifer and looks for ways to protect it and to keep it going. And when you go to their site, they've got a great education site with all sorts of data that can just be plugged right into. I mean, they're using ArcGIS, so you can use what they've already produced or use the data that they've got there available, and use that in the classroom, tailor it to the needs once you have basic skills in GIS. So local governments and other way is another kind of route to getting some of that data.
And what I've found in the past is really some of the things that are just technically challenging, right? Our licenses aren't working, or, oh my God, our IT people don't know what to do with this stuff. We can easily jump in because we do that every day. We kind of have our connections at ESRI. We can bring those resources in or work with their account reps and help your technology at least run. So you're not fighting technology, you're focused on teaching. And that has helped a ton in the past. Go ahead, Eric.
Along that note, with ESRI's implementation of the single login, that has made it wonderful. So the students in my school, we log in regularly, and we have access to all the software that ESRI has made available through their educational platform. It's been a great resource to do it that way. So much easier.
Yeah, Eric, if you're, again, you are on the forefront of all of this, and along with your colleagues that are on the panel today. For those of you that don't know what Eric's talking about, there at the university level, it's much more common. The students go to University of Pennsylvania, and they sign into the University of Pennsylvania system. And they get Microsoft 365, and they get all the ESRI tech, and they get whatever else, all their email and the student portals and all that kind of stuff with a single sign-on. So like what Eric's talking about, having that at the K-12 level is not all that common. But I've got an article from my colleague here that's just about 2 months old that I'll put in the chat box about a school district that is doing this. And like Eric's saying, it's one less thing to have to keep track of in terms of a student having to keep track of another login to get into ArcGIS Online and Pro and Business Analyst Web and all that kind of stuff. So if you can swing it, I'm sure Eric would be happy to share how, the fits and starts that, he was very dogged and persistent in getting it. But if you can push that through, that's another good thing for sure.
Yes, yes. And ESRI technology is fantastic. ESRI keeps making it simpler and simpler to do things online in the cloud. But you are drinking through a fire hose when it comes to the technology. So we can help there. Okay, just last, we're kind of right past the time we need to be, but with the room is open for another 15 minutes. Any other questions at all?
I have one more, but I'll wait if anybody else has one.
Sure, go for it.
All right. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the mic, but okay. Do you guys have any examples of people using XR and GIS in education? Previously, I was a LiDAR technician, and I fell in love with LiDAR and terrain models, 3D models, and so I took an XR development course. And so I'm trying to bridge my gap between XR and GIS. I'm just curious if anybody has any examples of people using this for education, and I don't know, just for my own curiosity.
I'm not aware of anyone doing that. You're definitely stepping out into the bleeding edge, which is great.
I would say that I know of some educators that are using LiDAR data. But if you mean by XR having headsets and virtual reality, it's always been one of those things that, gosh, wouldn't it be great if, but the actual implementation is, since it involves some hardware, slower than many of us anticipated. But in terms of LiDAR data, and then there are some schools with 3D printers. So they're printing some of the results of their either UAV drone collection or their LiDAR data or something else in those. I wish I had it in the office with me. It's in a different room, but those 3D printouts of the campus or the canyon where the students went on field trips, and I love that kind of tactile stuff too.
Just so you know, there is, if you go to the TNRIS's website, pretty much the whole state of Texas is available in LiDAR data sets. So if you ever need LiDAR data sets, there is no shortage in Texas. If you're not 100% sure how to get to it or whatever, I'm putting my name and email in the chat. Just call me because we do a lot of work with LiDAR.
Yeah, I was an intern at TNRIS, and that's why I fell in love with LiDAR. And so I've used all of their LiDAR data all the time and done fun stuff with it. So yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up here because I've already lost 2 of our panelists that to get back to the classrooms. And I just thank you, teachers. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. For others who want to contact these panelists later, I'm sure they'll be more than willing to help you and talk to you about trying to get GIS in your classrooms. And thanks a million to Joseph. Grab his email. It is in the chat box. He is your ESRI resource. He will find what you need to get you going. So thank you very much for attending. And once again, thank you to the panelists. We're indebted to you to come and share your knowledge. Thank you.
Thanks for organizing this, Beni. It was awesome being with you all.
Thank you so much.
Very inspiring.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Dr. Kerski.
Hey, want to come see you down in Texas at some point.
Absolutely. Bye-bye, y'all.